You're tuned in to the English Up Podcast.
Brought to you by the Speak English with Us.
You know that awful moment when you read a page yesterday, and today your brain acts like it never happened?
Oh, absolutely. And the worst part is when you can almost feel the answer hiding there, but it won't come out.
This is a B1 level episode, perfect for intermediate learners. Beginners, you're welcome too.
And if you've ever said, I studied it, but I can't say it, this one's for you.
In the first few minutes, we'll show you why that happens, and why rereading is often the sneaky trap.
There is one thing we discovered. The fix isn't more staring. It's a better way to pull knowledge back out.
Quick question. How many times did you review the same notes last week? 1, 3, or 10?
If your answer is too many, don't worry. Your brain isn't broken, it's just being overprotected.
I keep thinking about that exam feeling. When you know you knew it, but the words disappear at the exact second you need them.
That's why today's episode matters. We're not just talking about studying, we're talking about memory that actually stays usable.
And there's a tiny shift that can change everything, especially when you're tired, stressed, or short on time.
Stay until the end for our Word Tour 5 expressions that will help you talk about memory, review, and long-term learning more naturally.
Also, I'm guessing some of you are listening while pretending to organize your study notes, or maybe while avoiding them completely.
That's a dangerous hobby, by the way. I've done the I'll just look again for 1 minute trick far too many times.
And later, we'll give you one tiny trick. But first, let's name the real problem. Forgetting is expensive, embarrassing, and weirdly fast.
But it's fixable. Once you stop treating review like passive reading and start treating it like an active workout.
So if you've ever wanted your notes to actually stick, keep listening.
We're going to make that happen, one small shift at a time.
Yesterday, you read the article, nodded along, and thought, yes, I get it. Then today, nothing.
That's because recognition isn't the same as recall. Your brain can feel familiar without actually retrieving the idea.
So you're saying the page looked clear, but the memory never really got tested?
Exactly. And that's where retrieval practice comes in. It means trying to remember without looking.
That sounds almost too simple, which is annoying because simple things rarely feel impressive.
I know, people love the dramatic method, but memory usually prefers boring honesty.
I've definitely done the read it 5 times routine and called it study, then blanked the next morning.
Right, and rereading can trick you. The words feel smooth, but the learning stays shallow.
So give me a real-life version. Not theory, not a lecture. What does retrieval practice look like at your desk?
Close the notes. Set a timer for 3 minutes. Write 5 things you remember, even if they're messy.
Only 5? That feels tiny.
Tiny is good. You're forcing recall, and recall is the muscle that actually matters.
Okay, let me try it with a fake lesson. I read about habits, attention, and sleep. Then I close the book. And I write, focus fades, sleep matters, habits need cues.
Perfect. That's the point. You're not making pretty notes. You're building memory from the inside out.
And if I can't remember much, I don't panic.
No panic. The gap is useful. It tells you what needs attention, and it helps reinforce the parts that are weak.
So forgetting is not a crime scene.
No, it's just data. A slightly rude kind of data, but still data.
Then what about spaced repetition? People keep saying it like it's magic.
It's just reviewing at increasing time gaps. You see it today, then tomorrow, then 3 days later, then a week later.
So the timing matters as much as the content?
Exactly. Each return makes the memory a little stronger, and that repeated effort can reinforce what you learn.
I can already hear the objection. That sounds slow. I want one long session and done.
And that's the trap. Long sessions feel productive, but memory often needs repeated retrieval, not one heroic night.
Heroic nights are my specialty. Unfortunately, my desk looks like a small disaster after them.
Mine too, and my coffee mug becomes part of the curriculum.
Let's make this practical. Suppose I studied 10 new words. What do I do in the first 10 minutes after studying?
Shut the material. Say the words aloud from memory. Then check. Then say them again in a new order.
Why the new order?
Because your brain likes patterns. Changing the order forces a deeper recall, not just a sequence you memorize by habit.
And then later, 24 hours later, I do another short review?
Yes, 2 minutes. No notes at first. Then at 3 days, then at 7 days. That spacing is what keeps it from fading.
That already sounds more realistic than rereading for an hour while pretending I'm learning.
Exactly. And there's another reason it works. The effort to remember makes the memory more durable. It helps stick in your mind.
Stick in your mind. That's such a nice phrase.
It is. And if a phrase, a rule, or a word sticks in your mind, you can actually use it later.
So the goal isn't just to see the material again.
No, the goal is to make your brain practice pulling it out when it matters.
And by the way, there's a phrase for this. It's called retrieval practice. We'll break it down later.
And we'll show you how spaced repetition turns one lesson into something you can remember next week, not just tonight.
I still think the big mistake is waiting until you feel ready to review, because that feeling never really arrives.
I disagree. If you force review too early, you're just creating fake confidence. People think they've learned it, but they haven't really checked their recall yet.
That's fair, but you're missing the whole picture. Retrieval practice isn't about looking smart. It's about finding the gaps while they're still small.
Hold on. If the material is dense, like a long article or a work report, wouldn't a second read be faster and less frustrating?
It feels faster, sure, but fast isn't the same as effective. When you try to recall the main point without looking, your brain has to do the useful work.
So we're basically making the brain sweat. I can respect that. Still, a lot of learners panic when they can't remember everything.
They do, and that panic is exactly why retrieval practice matters. You don't need perfect memory. You need the habit of pulling out what you can, then checking what's missing.
But what if the learner remembers the wrong thing? That happens all the time. They feel sure, they speak, and then the mistake hardens.
That's where the correction part comes in. Recall first, then reinforce the right version. If you skip the attempt, you skip the learning.
I get that in theory, but in real life, people are busy. They open the notes, they panic, and they want the cleanest path, not the hardest one.
And that's why the sprint is only 10 minutes. It lowers the emotional cost. You don't have to study forever. You just have to start the loop.
But will that really stick in your mind? Or are we just dressing up a quick quiz and calling it science?
It sticks because you're not only reading the answer, you're wrestling with it. That's what strengthens recall. The effort is the point.
Okay, then explain the timing. Why not review every day or every hour if memory is so fragile?
Because spaced repetition matters. The gaps help your brain work a little harder each time. If you review too often, you can mistake familiarity for memory.
So the delay isn't a problem, it's part of the design.
Exactly. You might review after 24 hours, then 3 days, then 7. And each time, you ask the same question. Can I bring this back without looking?
That sounds annoyingly simple, which is usually a sign that it works. I keep wanting a more dramatic system because I like feeling clever.
We all do, but memory doesn't care about our drama. It cares whether the information gets reinforced enough to survive the gap.
I still worry about overconfidence, though. Someone gets one good recall session and thinks they're done.
That's the trap, yes? And that's why we pair the first attempt with later checks. One success doesn't mean mastery. It means you found a starting point.
Fair. And if the first attempt is messy, that's not failure. It's data.
Exactly. A messy first recall is often better than a perfect reread because it shows your real level.
So the debate isn't really review or not review. It's, do you want comfort or do you want durability?
That's a good way to say it. And comfort is tempting because it feels productive. But durability is what helps language, exams, and work knowledge survive the week.
I can hear someone saying, I don't have time for all this testing. What would you tell them?
I'd say, then don't test everything. Test 5 things. 10 minutes. 1 phone note. 1 voice memo. Tiny, repeated pressure.
And if they say, but I already forgot the details, that's actually the moment to begin. Forgetting isn't the enemy. It's the signal.
Right? And once you treat forgetting as feedback, you stop taking it so personally. You stop saying, I'm bad at memory, and start saying, I need a better loop.
So the disagreement becomes useful. Rereading can feel safe, but retrieval practice builds the stronger path.
And spaced repetition keeps that path from fading too quickly, which is why the 10-minute sprint worked so well.
Fine, you've convinced me more than a little. I still love a neat summary, but I love remembering things later even more.
That's the spirit. And we've got one more thing to do before word tour.
Let's make it practical then. If you're listening now, imagine one note from this week. Can you say it back without looking?
If you can, great. And if you can't, even better. Now you know where the gap is.
That gap is where the real learning starts. And that's exactly why this method beats passive rereading.
So the big idea is simple. Stop rereading like a robot and start pulling the ideas back out.
Right, and that's why our 5 key phrases matter. They name the exact memory moves we use today.
We've already used them in the story, so now they should feel familiar, not random.
Exactly, and this is where everything clicks into place.
After that debate, I keep thinking about the actual words we used, because they're doing a lot of heavy lifting.
They really are. And the first one is the big engine behind the whole episode, retrieval practice.
That phrase sounds technical, but the idea is pretty simple. You're trying to remember something without looking at it.
Right? No notes, no screen, no cheating off the page. You ask your brain to bring the answer back on its own.
So if I close my book and try to list the main points from memory, that's retrieval practice.
Exactly. And if you only reread, you're not doing that. You're just recognizing the words, which feels easier but helps less.
I like that, because it explains why I can know something in the moment and still freeze later.
Yep, your brain nods politely during reading, then forgets to send the memo.
Okay, so if I say, I did 5 minutes of retrieval practice before bed, that sounds natural?
Totally. Short, clear, useful. You could also say, I used retrieval practice with my notes. That works in study talk.
And the feeling after that is often messy, right? You know more than you can prove at first.
Exactly. But that little struggle is valuable. It makes the memory work harder.
Which brings us to spaced repetition. Another phrase that sounds fancy but behaves very simply in real life.
It means reviewing something at increasing time gaps. Not every 5 minutes, not all at once. You come back after a day, then a few days, then a week.
So the gap is part of the method, not a problem?
That's the point. The delay creates a new challenge, and that challenge helps the memory grow.
That actually feels kinder than cramming, because cramming makes me panic and then everything vanishes by breakfast.
Exactly. Spaced repetition is calmer and somehow more stubborn.
I could say I use spaced repetition for vocabulary. That sounds natural and practical.
Very natural. And you can also say, this app uses spaced repetition. Simple and clear.
Then there's recall. Such a short word, but it does a big job.
Recall is the ability to bring information back into your mind. It's the "can I get it out" moment.
So if I'm talking and the word appears slowly, that's recall happening in real time.
Exactly. And in learning, stronger recall means you can use the information when you actually need it.
I like that because it explains my brain in meetings. Sometimes the idea is there, just hiding behind the curtain.
That's a very honest sentence, and yes, that's recall doing a dramatic entrance.
Could I say, my recall gets better when I practice speaking?
Absolutely. That's a solid sentence. You can even say, my recall was weak today, if you want to be honest about it.
Now reinforce. This one sounds like action.
It is action. To reinforce something means to make memory or learning stronger. You add another layer, another win, another signal.
So when I review a mistake and say the correct version out loud, I'm reinforcing the right form?
Exactly. And when you repeat a useful sentence after getting feedback, you reinforce it again.
I could say, that example reinforced the rule for me.
Perfect. Or, I reinforce the pattern by saying it twice. That sounds natural in study or training talk.
And the last one is my favorite. Stick in your mind.
Great phrase. It means to stay in your memory for a long time.
So if a sentence is funny, emotional, or repeated well, it can stick in your mind.
Exactly. It's the kind of phrase you remember later without trying.
I'd say that example really stuck in my mind.
And that's the natural shape of it. You're not forcing memory, you're letting good design do the work.
So the full picture is, retrieval practice gets it out, spaced repetition brings it back at the right time, recall checks what's there, reinforce makes it stronger, and stick in your mind tells you it lasted.
That's the whole chain. And if you use these phrases yourself, they'll probably stick in your mind too.
I like that we've turned memory into a little system instead of a mystery.
Exactly. And that system is what makes your learning feel less slippery.
So today we learned that forgetting isn't always a sign that you failed. It's often a sign that you never tested the memory in the first place.
Right? And the real win is not more reading. It's retrieval practice, spaced repetition, and a plan that gives your brain a reason to work.
If you want a simple start, try this tonight. Close the page, write 5 points from memory, and check what you missed.
Then do it again tomorrow. And again after a few days. 10 minutes can do more than an hour of passive rereading.
I also love the phone note trick. 1 tiny question card, 1 answer, 1 quick self-test.
Yes, and keep the questions short. If the question is clear, your recall gets clearer too.
For me, the biggest shift was emotional. I used to think forgetting meant I was lazy or bad at learning.
And that's the trap. You start judging yourself instead of adjusting the method.
Once I changed the method, I felt calmer. Even when I forgot, I knew what to do next.
That's the point. Memory becomes a skill, not a personality test.
So, tonight, don't chase the perfect review session. Just run a tiny memory sprint and see what happens.
And if it feels messy, good. Messy means you're actually doing the work.
Before you go, we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, what's one thing you keep forgetting even after you study it?
We read every single comment. Thanks for listening, and try one 10-minute review sprint before the weekends.
Next time, we might look at another common learning problem that steals your progress in plain sight. So stay close.
Thanks for listening. And remember, the goal isn't perfect memory. It's memory that shows up when you need it.